this process going. I'd like to start by reading a quote from an Amazonian shaman. I wrote this down back in 1969 when I was a Peace Corps volunteer deep in the Amazon. And what he said, and I'm going to read it to you, I wrote it down so long ago. Touching the Jaguar means that you identify your fears and barriers, confront them, alter your perceptions about them, accept their energy, and take actions to change yourself and the world. Really, it's about how perception molds reality. And that's a major theme of the book, Touching the Jaguar, and will be a theme in this, this time that we're sharing now together. I'm going to repeat that. Touching the Jaguar means that you identify your fears and barriers, confront them, alter your perceptions about them, accept their energy, and take actions to change yourself and the world. And so I'm going to move from there to talk about why he said that to me. What was the background for that? And quite a few of you probably have already heard this story before, but as a yoga teacher one time told me, repetition is the heart of learning. And I just, let me show you my Jaguar. So touching the Jaguar, it's all about changing perceptions. There's that Jaguar. I've got it on, so it's touching me the whole time. So back in 1968, as some of you know, I joined the Peace Corps and was sent deep into the Amazon rainforest to live in Shuar territory. After I was there for a short period of time, I got very, very ill. I was dying, and I could barely stand up. In fact, I really couldn't stand up on my own. I was a long walk, a hike through dense jungle to the nearest road, and then about a two-day ride in a rickety old bus, if I could find one, to get to the nearest medical facility. No way at all I could do that. And so I was basically resigned to dying. And then late one afternoon, a shaman was brought to me, and he said he could heal me tonight. It really got my attention. I didn't know what a shaman was. I had no idea. I graduated from business school, but I was desperate. And so that night, the shaman took me on what we know as a shamanic journey or vision quest. And on that vision quest, suddenly in front of me appears this hazy figure. I didn't know what it was. I'm in this daze, I'm in this vision quest, there's this hazy figure. And the shaman says, touch the Jaguar. Well, I looked all around like, where's the Jaguar? But then I saw this hazy figure turned into this, like something like this. I reached out and touched it. And when I did, I saw that I'd grown up in New Hampshire, New England, more than 300 years. My family has lived in New England, and we're very hygienic, washed our hands a lot, ate very mild foods. And now I'm living with people who've never seen a bar of soap. They eat some very strange foods, as some of you have participated in, drinking chicha, which is this kind of beer that's made by the women chewing manioc root and spitting it. And then it ferments and it sets up a process of fermentation, and it purifies water. So they all know that the river water is dangerous because there's organic matter in it. But if you mix it with this alcoholic chicha, you can drink it. And they ate some very, very strange foods, in my opinion, squirming white grubs and things. And so I saw as I touched this Jaguar that every time I ate these foods or drank this spit beer, there was a voice like my mother's saying, son, it'll kill you. At the same time, I saw how incredibly healthy and robust and vital the Shuar are. The men are built like Tarzan, they're hunters and gatherers. They carry heavy weights out of the forest, dead animals. And the women I was in my early 20s. The women were looking quite good. And people live to be very, very old if they don't die of a hunting accident or snake bite or something. And so on that vision quest, I saw that it wasn't the food and drink killing me. It was my perception, my mindset. The next day I was healthy, on the road to recovery. A few days later, the shaman demanded that I become his apprentice. No desire to do that. Graduated from business school. Never heard of a shaman before. There was no future in shamanism. There is now, but there wasn't then. But he saved my life. And what he taught me more than anything else was that our perceptions mold our reality. After that, after I became an economist, I traveled around the world, Indonesia, Iran, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, all over Latin America. And everywhere I went, I would try to take some time off and spend a little time with some of the local shamans. And I discovered that this is a common theme in shamanism. It's their guiding principle. Perception molds reality. And then I began to understand that that's also the whole basis of modern psychiatry, psychology, quantum physics, marketing, corporate marketing, because, you know, there are no corporations, there's no religion, there's no culture, there's no countries, except as we perceive them. When enough people accept a perception and codify it into law, it has a huge impact on reality. That's the guiding force, and it's the force behind this whole idea. So once again, I'm going to read to you this quote that the shaman told, as I trained with the shaman and then with other shamans around the world, this quote kept coming back to me, and I wrote it down. I'd read it often, and it became the theme of the book, really. Touching the Jaguar means that you identify your fears and barriers, confront them, alter your perceptions about them, accept their energy. When you alter your perceptions and you touch that Jaguar, you get a whole new energy that impacts your value systems, and take actions to change yourself and the world. Very, very powerful. Well, after I left the Peace Corps, I did what I'd been trained to do in business school. I became an economist and then chief economist. My real job was really what we've come to call that of an economic hitman. I use this idea of molding reality through perceptions to convince leaders of countries to accept huge loans from the World Bank or some of its sister organizations that then had to be used. A part of the loan deal was they had to be used to hire our corporations to build big infrastructure projects in that country, like power plants and industrial parks and highways. And these are actually were things that you could show statistically made the economy grow. So when you invest heavily in infrastructure in these countries, the GDP, the gross domestic product increases. We can show that statistically. But what I began to understand is that was a perception. It was one perception of a reality that was being created around this perception. And that reality said that all of these investments, doing this stuff, helps the country, helps everybody. The fact of the matter is, it didn't help everybody. It only helped our corporations that made huge profits off of this. And it also helped a few of the very wealthy families in the country, those that own the industries and the commercial establishments and the banks, the ones that benefited from more electricity, better roads and so forth. But the majority of the people suffered. Money was diverted from education, healthcare, and other social services in order to pay off the debt, the interest on the debt. And in the end, they could never pay off the principal. And so we'd go back, usually in the guise of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and say we'd restructure the loans. We'd help the country get out of this debt, but they had to meet a lot of conditionalities. And those included things like selling their resource, oil or whatever the resource that our corporations wanted, real cheap to our corporations without any environmental or social regulations, or allowing us to build a military base on their soil, or privatizing their major sectors like education and healthcare and even their prisons and schools sometimes, and sell them to our investors at very low prices. And so all of this was based, though, on this perception that we were doing something really good. What I came to see was that although the statistics, the perception was that the whole economy was growing, the fact of the matter is that the statistics were terribly skewed, very biased in favor of the rich. So if you take a country like the United States right now, 3 individuals have as much wealth as the bottom economic half of the population. If those 3 individuals are doing well, let's say making 10% return on their assets, and the half the country, the bottom half of the economic scale, is losing 3%. The average overall growth that's showing growth of 4 or 5%. So the statistics are very deceptive. They create this perception, and out of that perception, we actually create a reality of what development economics is all about. It took me a long time to understand that, but after a while I did, and I had that job for 10 years, and then I began to understand that what we were really doing was creating a new form of colonialism. And we were creating an economic system. It's really a governmental, social, economic system that economists are calling a death economy. I think I was one of the first to coin that phrase, but it's fairly accepted now. And a death economy is based on this very materialistic idea that the only responsibility of business is to maximize short-term profits regardless of the social and environmental costs. That's an idea that had been growing for many years, but really took off in 1976 when Milton Friedman won the Nobel Prize in economics and later became an advisor to President Reagan and made huge waves around the world. It's an insane goal to maximize short-term profits regardless of the social and environmental costs. But all it is a perception. However, it's a perception that caught on big time with corporate heads and with business schools. And it's created this death economy, which is really an economic system that's destroying itself, consuming itself into extinction. The problems that we're experiencing right now, global climate change, species extinction, terrorism even, income inequality, and the coronavirus. They're symptoms of this death economy. They are not the problem. They are problems, but they are not the problem. The problem is the overall system of a death economy. And so, you know, we're really at this time in history where we're realizing that this isn't working. We human beings are really very vulnerable, but we're like the pilots of this space station Earth. And we've been navigating the space station toward disaster. And I think in our hearts, we know that. Most of us know it. Probably everybody participating in this program knows that. And I think most of the world knows that. But we're afraid to admit it, because what that involves is change, radical change. And that's touching a Jaguar. It's a big Jaguar. But I'm going to get into that today a little bit more, and what your role is in all of this, in touching that Jaguar, making a better life for yourself and the world. The subtitle to Touching the Jaguar, the book, is Transforming Fear into Action to Change Your Life and the World. We'll do some practices and shamanic journeying around that in a minute. But what we really need to do now is turn that perception around and say, instead of a goal of maximizing short-term profits for a few wealthy shareholders, basically, mostly, we need to maximize long-term benefits for everyone. Our corporations need to pay investors who support the company investing in cleaning up pollution. And there are companies doing this today, creating methods for taking the plastic out of the rivers in Asia and the oceans and recycling it. And so it's about cleaning up pollution. It's about regenerating destroyed environments. It's about coming up with new technologies that recycle, that do not ravage the earth. In fact, that are renewable, that totally renewable, that really support the earth. And that's the life economy. And all it takes really to change that is a change of perception, moving from this idea of maximizing short-term profits for corporations and short-term material consumerism for all of us. I go out today and I gotta buy new clothes. I gotta buy one of those Jaguar t-shirts. And it's about this short-term perspective. The indigenous people have always understood the importance of a life economy, the long term. And let's face it, we all come from indigenous cultures. You know, of the 250,000 years or so that we've been human beings on this planet, almost all of those, we've lived with a life economy until the last several hundred. Maybe we could even stretch to go back and say it started several thousand years ago that we began focusing on this extreme materialism. But it's been a very, very short time in human history. We've always had a life economy. And that economy is based on doing what's best for ourselves, but also and especially for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and not just of human beings, but taking care of nature, making sure that we leave nature in as good a condition or better than the way that we inherited it. And so this is really this transformation from an economic system that we know isn't working to one that will, from a death economy to a life economy. Now, another shaman a number of years ago, high in the Andes Mountains, and some of you have heard this story before too, Maria Juana, great name, Yamberla, Quechua shaman. One time, one of members of our group, and I was translating, said, how do we save the earth? And Maria Juana laughed. You know, she said, hey, Pachamama, the earth is not in danger. We are, we humans, and a few other species, a lot of other species we bring with us, because we are the pilots of this space station. But you know, we're like so many fleas. And if we get to be too much of a nuisance, Pachamama will just shake us all off. And then she looked up, she pointed at this volcano that hovers over her home, Imbabura. And she said, you know, a few years ago, 20 years ago, that volcano was covered with a thick ice cap. It isn't anymore. Pachamama is twitching. She hasn't shaken us off yet. She's twitching. We got to listen. And we are all blessed, she said, to be alive at this time when we can listen and take actions to change things. And you know, over the years since then, I've watched Pachamama twitch. The hurricanes, the fires in California, the tsunamis, the tornadoes, all these things, these once in 100-year events that have been happening every year or so, are these twitches. But we really haven't listened for the most part. We see them as localized, you know, like, okay, so if I survive the hurricane or whatever, the outside world will come and take care of me in a few days, maybe a few weeks. But bottled water will arrive, food will arrive, and this leader will come up and say, we're going to rebuild. We're going to be like we were before. We're going to be even better before, but we're going to rebuild the old system. We really didn't get the message. We don't want the old system. That's the death economy. It's not an economic system that works for the planet, or for most of us, frankly, as individuals. It's not satisfying. And so along comes the coronavirus. When I wrote the book, Touching the Jaguar, Transforming Fear into Action to Change Your Life in the World, I had no idea, of course, if there would be a coronavirus. But I did know that we were in trouble. I did know that we're receiving lots of messages. Whether you look at it from the shamanic standpoint of Pachamama is speaking to us, or from the scientific standpoint of all that's going on, and the scientists can look at those incredible satellite photographs of China and can go to LA and see the stars for the first time, maybe, and various things like that. The message is very clear from a scientific standpoint. We cannot continue on the path we're on. And so this coronavirus is not local. It's impacting everybody on the planet. And it's speaking very loudly and clearly. We really need to listen. This is the time to truly listen, to understand that we've got to convert this death economy into a life economy. So that really begs the question, what can you do? What can you personally do to make this happen? And I think, you know, I'd like to say that the number one thing that you can really do to change your life in the world is to understand what your role really is. What do you want your role to be? And I'm going to go into that more in a minute, and then we're going to do a shamanic journey that will take you deeper into it. But I think to be truly happy and satisfied, we need to realize our dream, our personal bliss, but we also need to help make a better community. And we can define that community as one other person, our family, our village, our city, our country, the world. But it's to be really happy, we have to be bigger than ourselves. And so this process of going through what is the, again, the number one way to attain the life that you truly want for yourself starts by asking 5 more questions. So that's the first question. What can you do? What do you really want for yourself? But that breaks down into 5 sub-questions. And you're going to all be receiving a workbook in the next few days after this that'll outline these things. So you're welcome to take notes now if you want, but you don't need to, because you'll be getting all of this in this workbook. And I think everybody listening has also ordered the book. It's in there also. But I felt that one of the reasons to do this now and to present this method now is because the book doesn't actually, you won't get it until mid-June. And this is a good time to get started doing this when we're going through this amazing crisis that we're all experiencing. So this question, what can I do to obtain the life I really want? What do you really want in life? And so the number one question is, what do you really want? What will bring you the greatest satisfaction? What is your higher purpose? Why did you come into this life at this incredibly critical time in human history? Or we could look at it like, if you're lying on that proverbial deathbed and looking back, what is it that you're most happy that you did? Or conversely, what makes you sad that you didn't do? And now's the time to identify that and to do it. What do you most want to do with your life? And the second question, question number 2, is how does that tie in with making a better community, better world? And again, you can define this as fairly localized, your family, your village, your city, or you can define it as the whole world. What is your role? How does bringing satisfaction into your life? And I'm going to give you an example in a minute. Tie in with making a better world, transforming a death economy into a life economy. And the third question is, what jaguars, what barriers are holding you back? What's stopping you from doing this? Or what has stopped you from doing this? What voices are speaking to you? Like my mother's voice, or whoever's voice it was, telling me that the food would kill me. What are your jaguars? What perceptions have you accepted that a teacher, religious figure, a book, a parent has instilled in you? And the fourth question is, how do you touch that jaguar, those jaguars? How do you break through those barriers? How do you touch that jaguar? When you touch the jaguar, it gives you energy. It gives you wisdom. It gives you the courage to move forward. It conspires with you to move into your bliss, your higher purpose, that which you most like. But what do you actually have to do to touch that jaguar and to reach out, to touch that jaguar and to accept its energy? And the fifth question then is, what actions do you need to take to make that happen, to change your perceptions and to turn those perceptions into actions? So let me give you a personal example, because that's probably the easiest way to work. So I love to write. I really love to write. It's my favorite thing. If I'm feeling stressed out or something, I want to write. It doesn't matter. Most of, I've published 10 books, but I've probably written 10 times that many that have never been published, at least in one form or another. That's a wild guess, but you got to think about it. A professional tennis player practices for 1,000 hours for every hour he plays on the court, or a pianist practices for 1,000 hours for every hour she is in a concert hall. I write. So I love to write. And that's the question number 1. What gives you the most satisfaction? Writing. That brings me bliss. Question number 2, how does that tie in with making a better world? Well, I write stories that I hope are fun to read and interesting, and they're all about creating a life economy, transforming a death economy into a life economy, inspiring people to feel empowered to do that. That's how I get into that second question. The third question, what Jaguars do I need to touch to move forward with this? Or did I, and at one point it was a big Jaguar. When I went to high school, I was editor of my newspaper. I won short story prizes. I was a good writer. I got accolades as a writer. But when I went to college and majored in English, I had an English teacher that criticized my writing terribly, gave me all C's or worse. And it hurt me so much. The thing that I most loved was being criticized by this professor that I had great respect for. He was a published author. He was famous as a writer. And I ended up quitting college because of that, and a few other things, but that was part of it. That was a big part of it. Eventually, I went back to college, but I didn't major in English anymore. I avoided writing completely. I went to business school. I studied economics and business administration to avoid all of that. And then I became economist, chief economist, economic hitman. But I was never happy doing that. I was living what seemed like the American dream, making a very good salary, traveling first class around the world, staying in the best hotels, eating in the finest restaurants, wining and dining with presidents, things that as a kid growing up in rural New Hampshire, the son of a teacher at a boys' boarding school who made basically no money. We had a room and board given to us, but my dad made very little money, but I was surrounded by very rich kids. I'd always wanted these things, traveling first class, visiting these countries where many of these kids had come from. And now I was getting it. And so I thought I was living the American dream, but I realized I was really unhappy. After 10 years, I had this moment of enlightenment. I go into this in the book, but I'm not going to go into it here. But I had this that had been building up for a while. I began to see that the statistics were skewed, that we were basically lying, that we were creating a new form of colonialism. We were creating a death economy. But there was this other Jaguar that said, you're living the dream. You can't leave this. How can you possibly leave? You look at you, you're making a lot of money. You're traveling around the world. You're doing all these things you always wanted to do. Yeah. And I was living on a lot of Valium and alcohol and then coffee in the morning. I realized I was unhappy. And at that point, I also decided, though I quit, and I decided I wanted to write. I wanted to write about Indigenous people, the people I've been a Peace Corps volunteer with, but there was still this voice, this professor, like, you're a lousy writer. And then I realized that this guy was just a man. And then it struck me. He had criticized Bob Dylan's writing. And Bob Dylan eventually won the Nobel Prize in Literature. In any case, a lot of people thought Bob Dylan was a brilliant writer all along. So, oh my God, like this professor who I had this deep respect for didn't like my writing, but he didn't like Bob Dylan's either. Who was he? He liked Dickens. Well, I kind of like Dickens too, but he's not exactly relevant to this day and age the way he writes. So I got that message. So, I touched that Jaguar. I went out there and I touched the voice of that teacher. And as I really touched it, I got the message, you don't have to listen to him. You can write. And so the next step is, it was changing that perception, turning that perception around, and adopting a new value system, which was to value my own writing. So that's step number 4. Is 3 is you touch the Jaguar. 4, you look at what it takes now to change the perception. What do you got to do? And 5, you take the actions. And what's the actions of a writer? You write. I realized I had to just write, even if I wasn't getting published. I needed to write. I needed to practice that piano. I needed to hone my techniques, which I had not done for quite a few years. Taking the actions. And I have to say that no matter who you are, what your job is, what your profession is, what your love is, what your love in life is, you can apply these 5 steps. So a friend of mine is a very good carpenter in New Hampshire, and I know there's some people on here from New Hampshire. Maybe you're on here, Joe. In any case, I say to a carpenter who was like, I love to work with my hands. That's what I want to do in life. Let's say you haven't quite made that profession yet, but that's what you want to do. And so, but that's your goal. That's your success story. That's your bliss. And then the question is, how do you apply this to the bigger world? And the answer is you build things with sustainable materials, and you tell your customers, your clients, that you're going to use materials, better materials, sustainable materials. Then the Jaguar is, but my clients don't want to hear this from me. They're going to come back and say to me, it costs more to use sustainable materials. And then you touch that Jaguar, and the message you get is you tell your clients, well, perhaps it might cost a little bit more. That's not a cost. It's an investment in the future, your kids' future, your grandchildren's future. It's an investment in life. And so you touch that Jaguar, and then what are the actions you take? You go out and start selling your services as a carpenter. And we can all use that, whether you're a teacher, a business coach, a psychologist, a plumber, a carpenter, a parent, whatever you are, you can apply those 5 questions. What do I most want in life? How do I use that to help create a better world or better community? What are the barriers in my way, the Jaguars? What do I have to do to touch those Jaguars, change those perceptions, and what actions do I take? And I'm also move into 5 specific things that you can do every day for 10 minutes or a little less even. And you don't have to do it every day. And maybe it's every other day, maybe it's twice a week, whatever feels right. I'd recommend trying to do it once every day. That ties in with all that. And these are another 5 steps. I guess I like the number 5. It's a good number from the Mayan standpoint. A lot of indigenous people like 3s and 5s. The first thing is to, in one sentence, write down your dream, your higher purpose. What brings you bliss? I want to be a writer. I want to be a carpenter. Step number 2, in one sentence, write how this can support life. I'm going to write about transforming the death economy into a life economy. I'm going to write stories about that. Or I'm going to be a carpenter that uses sustainable local materials as much as possible. Step number 3, write one sentence to identify your Jaguars. A professor told me I couldn't write. My clients don't want to hear that about sustainability. That's not what they want to hear from me. Step number 4, commit to touching that Jaguar. Commit, in my case, to saying, yeah, I'm not going to listen to that. I will not listen to that professor anymore. Instead, I will start writing. And carpenter, I'm going to get out there and start talking to my clients about transforming, about using sustainable materials. And step number 5, take the actions. But step number 5 really involves, so you write those 4 things down once. You only need to write them once, but you may want to do this more times if you feel like it, but you only really need to write those 4 things down once. And then every day, and this is why it takes less than 10 minutes really, every day, read those 5 things. Read defining your dream. How does it support a life economy? Identifying your Jaguars, and commit to touching the Jaguar, taking actions. Read that every morning and make that commitment, and then go out every day and do something. And to do something can be as simple as sending a tweet or posting on Facebook or an email to friends, or to people that might be your clients as a carpenter, or in my case, maybe writing for half an hour. I like to write for longer, but it could be half an hour. Or it could be as complex as running for president of the United States. So there's a whole spectrum there of what actions you can take every day. They can be very simple and easy, or they can be more complex and they can differ different days. And so, but it's important, do something every day. You'll feel good about it. Something, no matter how large or how small it is, do something every day. And I think that when we do this, it's a lot of fun. You know, I get up in the morning. Some people will do this before breakfast. I happen to be a breakfast guy, not a big one, but you know, and I have breakfast, and then I sit and I go through this, and then I write because that's what I love to do, and that's what I've committed to doing. So again, what we're really looking at here is how do we mold reality by changing perceptions, that's so powerful when we understand that the power that our perceptions have on creating our reality. Here's one. I recently did a workshop for a group of people who were very concerned about the coronavirus and what it was doing to them emotionally. And so they were saying, I'm a social animal. I can't stand to just stay in this house and away from people for another week. Forget about another month or 2 months or however long this is going to go. I don't see how I can do that. Well, you know, that's a big Jaguar. That's a tough one. That's a big barrier. And so I encourage them to go through this process, and you touch that Jaguar and you say, whoa, wow, this is giving me a great opportunity to do these 5 things, to identify what I really want in life. I've always wanted to play the flute. I've got a flute, and there's the internet that can teach me how to play the flute. Or I've always wanted to write a book or write a short story. Well, I've got the time now, I can do it. Or I've always wanted to have more time to get on Zoom or Skype or something and talk to my family that lives overseas. Whatever it is. So to feel that, you know, touch that Jaguar of the gifts that this virus is giving us, the opportunity to take more time to read the book that you always wanted to read, or the books, to watch the movies that you always wanted to watch. Again, it's about really looking at, what do you want right now? What do you want as a result of the coronavirus? And what are the Jaguars you got to touch? And how do you touch them? And what actions do you take? It's a beautiful time to really explore these things, which is why I wanted to offer this webinar now, rather than just waiting until you get the book, and why you're going to be getting a workbook that goes into all of this very shortly. So I think it's time now for each of you to get clear on your unique role in life and in the world. And what I'd like to say as we start, we're going to do a shamanic journey, is I don't know each and every one of you that's out there. I'm just trying to look at the numbers. We've got, what, 260, 70 people on here now. We'll have more watching the video. I obviously don't know all of your passions, but what I do know is that each one of you has passion. And each one of you has skills. Again, I don't know what your skills are. My passion is writing, and hopefully I have some skills in it. And so this is the time to really honor your passions and look at how you can use those passions for the rest of your life, however long that is, and you don't know, for the rest of your life, starting right now. How you can use your passions to take you into your greatest satisfaction, your greatest bliss. And then what skills you can bring in to make that happen, and to use this to create a better world. Again, our true happiness comes from this feeling of satisfaction that we're not just doing something for ourselves, we're helping others. So let's do a little shamanic journey where we can get into that. And I'm going to be using couple of rattles here. These are Mayan rattles. Yeah, they're Mayan. And I'll be guiding you through this journey. So I just want to suggest, I'm just going to be starting this. This is going to be maybe, I don't know, I'm not going to time it, but maybe 10, 15 minutes, more or less, 20, who knows. We'll see how it goes. But so please get very relaxed. Can anybody Give me a thumbs up if you're hearing this. Is the rattle good? Yeah, my voice. You can hear my voice and you can hear the rattles. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So get very relaxed. And if you're sitting in a chair, I suggest you put your feet flat on the floor. Just a suggestion. You might even want to lie down on the carpet next to you. I'm presuming that nobody's in a car. If you are, I suggest don't do this right now. Save it for later. Get very, very relaxed. Close your eyes. Let's all take a deep breath together and let it out with a good sound. And another one. One more. And now, just feel yourself letting go of everything. Let go of all your thoughts, all your concerns, all your perturbations. Not sure what that word means, but it's a nice word. Let go of them. Don't be perturbed. Let go of everything. Totally relax your mind and totally relax your body. Let go of all your muscles. Totally relax. Feel yourself now dropping down through the floor, wherever you are, into the earth. If you've been trained in some way to go to an upper world, that's fine too. But just feel yourself going into nature. If you're going into the earth or the heavens, feel how they're caressing you, loving you, massaging you. You're going deeper and deeper, getting more and more relaxed. Deeper and deeper, more and more relaxed. Deeper and deeper, more and more relaxed. Feeling the earth loving you, holding you, Pachamama, massaging and caressing you. Feeling totally relaxed, deeper and deeper, more and more relaxed. And now you find yourself arriving at a sacred space. This is a place where you feel totally safe and secure. Maybe someplace you visited as a child. Or perhaps it's a place you've never been to before. Or maybe it's right where you are. But it's a place where you feel totally safe and secure. And just spend the next few moments exploring this space however you want. If you're visual, you might see it. A lot of us aren't visual, that's okay. You may feel it, or taste it, smell it, touch it, listen to it, or just think it, imagine it. Imagination comes from I the Magus, I the magician. But just spend a few moments getting to know this space. And now, while you're in this sacred space, ask yourself this question: what do I most want for the rest of my life? What do I want to do? What do I want to be? And as an answer, see the answer as a hologram, something you can really get into. See it as a reality. Bring it out as a reality. For example, I'd say, I want to be a writer, and I could see myself sitting at a desk at a computer or typewriter in the old days, writing, and then going on a speaking tour because my books have been published. See what you really want for your life, for the rest of your life. Who are you? What brings you bliss? And now take a look at what has held you back from doing that, or what might hold you back. What are voices that somebody might have said to you? You might have heard voices that said something like, you don't have enough education. You're not good enough looking. You're not a member of the right society. You don't have the skills. That's too big a thing to ask for. Whatever it is, what are the barriers, the jaguars that have stood in your way, or might in the future stand in your way? Maybe it's something you've told yourself, something you've read. Maybe it's a physical situation, something about your body that you think you've been given the perception that that's held you back. It can be more than one. And now take a look at what will it do to touch that jaguar. What happens when you touch that jaguar? See that jaguar there. Reach out and touch it. Touch it now. What gifts does it give you? What does it tell you about changing those perceptions, those ideas, those barriers, breaking through those barriers? How does the jaguar work with you, using your passions and your skills to reach your bliss? Now look at what actions you need to take to work with this Jaguar, to use those passions and skills to reach your greatest satisfaction, your bliss, materialize your dream. What do you need to do? Starting later today or tomorrow. Make an absolute commitment to taking those actions, to following through. Let your consciousness return to your sacred space. You now take a moment to just formulate one sentence that you can write down later, but you'll remember. You don't need to write it now. You'll remember it. To define your dream, what will bring you satisfaction. One sentence. In one sentence to describe how this not only helps you, but supports a better world, the life economy, or whatever, your community, or the entire planet. One sentence. Now one sentence to identify the jaguars, the barriers, the things that might have stopped you or might stop you in the future from doing that. And now one sentence that describes the actions you need to take to make that happen. And these can change periodically. You can start with just one action, perhaps, or a couple, and add to it later on. Now let your consciousness return to your sacred space. Think of a little image that you could call your personal icon, your personal logo. It could be a flower, a smiley face, something simple that you can put on a Post-it pad. And in your imagination, put a bunch of these on a bunch of Post-it pads, those little sticky things we can stick around at different places. Put this symbol there. On these sticky pads. Your logo. Could just be your initials. Now spend a moment to imagine yourself going around to the places that you see on a daily basis, perhaps the mirror in your bathroom, your refrigerator door, your cell phone screen, your computer screen, the faucet in your bathroom or your kitchen, whatever, places that you visit every day, and put these sticky pads there. Spend a few moments just doing that. And as you do so, know that these sticky pads are going to be there to remind you to take these actions, to obtain the life you truly want. Every time you see them, you'll remember to do this process. If you've already finished, go around again and just look at each of these places and know that when you visit them, every time you do from now on, you're going to be reminded of the power you have to change your dream, to realize your dream, to manifest the reality you most want, your bliss, your higher purpose, whatever you want to call it. You have the power, you have the passions and the skills to do that. And every time you see these, you go to these places, you'll recommit to taking actions that day to make this happen. And when you're ready, allow your focus, your consciousness to return to your sacred place. For a moment, just review this journey. How you asked yourself those 5 questions. And then you set up your daily practice by a single sentence to define your dream, a single sentence to describe how that will support a life economy, a single sentence to identify the barriers that stand in your way, the fears, what we might call Jaguars, single sentence to commit to touching those Jaguars, to going through those barriers, to accepting the energy, the wisdom that they give you, in very much the same way that a martial artist doesn't necessarily try to fight his opponent so much as use the opponent's energy to redirect it. That's what you're doing here. You're redirecting the energy of these barriers. And finally, every day that you're going to read these things and take action. So now in your sacred place, give thanks for the sacred place. Give thanks for what you've learned. Give thanks for being alive at this amazing time in history when human beings really, really are being presented messages from Pachamama, the earth. Earth is speaking, whether you look at it from a shamanic point of view or a scientific point of view, there's no question. we are being told that we must change. Give thanks for being alive at this time. It's a blessed time. Give thanks for going through this process. Give thanks to yourself for showing up, for being present here, for doing this, for making the commitments you've made. And now I'm going to be speeding up the rattling, and as I do so, allow yourself to come out of your sacred space. Give thanks to your sacred space also, and know that you can return there anytime you want. You don't need the rattles, you don't need my voice. You can do this anytime, any place. You don't need anything outside. You can use whatever sounds are around you to take you there. Give thanks to the sacred place and know you can return there. And as I speed up the rattling, allow yourself to leave the sacred space for now. Journey back up through the earth or down through the heavens. Again, feeling the love, feeling massaged, caressed, loved on your own time. And at the end, I'm going to do 4 single rattle shakes. If you're not already fully present back in the room with your eyes open on the 4th shake, please be so then. Well, I'm back. Buying shakers. So, welcome back. I hope that was a great journey for you. I think it would be nice if some people, maybe we could take a couple of people could share the experience they have. And Jess, I hope we've got your sound and we can hear you.
I think we do.
Good. Okay, then maybe you could, people want to share the experience they had. I've noticed there's some comments that are kind of intellectual coming through here. I'd prefer it if people would really shake, would really yeah, shake, really share the experiences of that journey. We're getting a lot of comments like, this was super powerful, beautiful experience, very nice experience. I'll share, okay. Well, just write it in the chat room and we'll read it. He says, John, you need someone to shake those for you, but I like to shake them. Beautiful, thank you. Jess, are you there?
I'm here, yeah. My space is the tree axis and my vision is that I am the conduit of perception. Beautiful. The Jaguar really talked back. I felt a feeling of calm and serenity. Beautiful journey you led us on. I was in the middle of the earth and want to become a voice for the earth and its relations to humans through songs. Thank you, Chris. Teresa says, I forgot, but as we went through, I remembered my commitment to facility awareness. Laura says, column of light through heavens and down to earth, tree of life. I have access to the power. Manveer says, I received the next steps. Jacob says, I felt like the piece I was missing came back to me. Beautiful. Jude says, I am healing myself and the world with my words. Tara shares, as a shamanic practitioner, I'm grateful for your guidance through this journey. I discovered a realm I had not been aware of. Simon shares, I want to be a voice to connect people together. I was in the middle of the earth in a secret cave, and healing of me and earth happened simultaneously. So much light and love. Susie shares, I was at our family farm in Honduras, still going after 100+ years of providing security, jobs, and conservation of nature in our community. Christine shares, I went to an as yet created shrine at my conscious learning center that I am creating. Future activity swirled all around in the fully functional open center, changing lives and elevating the consciousness of humanity. Vikram shares, beautiful experience. My Jaguar hugged and licked me and we played together. I was amazed. Rick shares, fewer humans, so more room for other beautiful animals and plants.
So thank you. Thank you all. There's so many things coming in here. And you all can be part of our Facebook what is it, chat room, whatever it is, our Facebook group that you all can all be members of now that you're part of this, and we can continue sharing. I wanted to say one more thing about this business of pitching the Jaguar. I often, in fact, one of the shamans showed me this. I think of it as almost, it's like two realities. There's reality one and reality two. And they're connected by what you might call a perception bridge. And so, for example, when I was sick in the Amazon, reality one, the reality one is I was drinking spit beer and eating strange foods. The perception bridge that I crossed was that it's killing me. It took me to reality two, which is I was getting very sick. So to change that, I start with the same reality, reality one, spit beer and strange foods. But if I can change that perception to this food is local and organic, it makes the schwa very healthy. It ought to make me healthy. Then I go to a second reality. And we can do that with the death economy to a life economy. We change the perception of what it means to be successful. Instead of short-term maximization of profits and material benefits, we go for long-term. Standing on that bridge is this Jaguar. This Jaguar, isn't she beautiful? She could stop us, like a voice saying, oh, yeah, you eat those foods and drink that stuff, it's gonna kill you. But when you touch that Jaguar, she is so sweet, she is so friendly, she's so beautiful that she gives you energy, wisdom, fortitude, perseverance to move forward, to move into that. And just one more personal experience I'd share, and that is that the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman was rejected by 39 publishers. All the major big houses and little houses, everybody. By the time you get about the 6th or 7th rejection letter, you're kind of tempted to say, well, screw this. My book's no good. I'm not going to move forward. But I remember that teacher, that professor in college. And so I kept talking to the Jaguar, and the Jaguar kept telling me, well, this guy, this editor that rejected you, he had a fight with his wife in the morning and over breakfast and came to work in a bad mood and just threw everything into the rejection pile. Or this editor, she had a headache this morning or whatever. She just threw him into the rejection pile. This person just didn't want to deal with what might be a controversial issue. And these things so I kept resubmitting. And finally, the beautiful small house in California, in San Francisco Bay Area, Barrett Kohler, which happens to be the first publisher to be a B corporation, a benefit corporation. They bought the book and they're publishing the new one also, like the Jaguar book, Touching the Jaguar. And it almost immediately went to the New York Times bestseller list and stayed there for a year and a half. Sold more than 2 million. It's sold more than 2 million copies now. I can't even keep track in over 35 languages. So again, it's that touch that Jaguar. Don't give up. The Jaguar tells you keep going. Don't listen to those messages from other people. Take strength from them. And know that people are criticizing you. Today, as people are moving from a death economy to a life economy, as we're waking up to the need to change, we're afraid of change. And at the same time that there's this consciousness awakening, there's another force setting in to stop us. The voice of the very conservative, the authoritarians, the ones who say, no, we can't change, blah, 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 blah. Well, take strength from that. Know that they're saying that because we really are winning. They know that we're winning. And that's an important Jaguar to touch, to take the energy from resistance. Revolutionaries have always had to take energy from those who oppose them. That's where they get their energy, because they know that when people start to oppose them, they must be winning. They're doing something right. And so just feel that. And I'm going to bring my talking to an end now and see, Jessica, maybe you can facilitate if people have questions. I guess they send them in on a chat and you'll read them. And
Yes. So we're going to open the theoretic floor for some Q&A. So if you have any questions for John about what we've talked about your journey, etc., you can pop that in the chat and we will read them. So Kat is asking about the name of the Facebook group. It's the Touching the Jaguar Community Facebook group, and you should all have received an invitation for that in the email for this workshop. And if you need some support, you can email john@johnperkins.org and we'll make sure that you are set up. Francesca is asking, how specific do you think the dream should be?
That's a wonderful question. I'm so glad you asked that, Francesca. So again, I think I'll give a personal example. So my dream is to convert a deaf economy into a life economy. That's a huge dream, globally. But that's the overriding dream. The specific dream is I'll write a book about it. I'll write a book called Touching the Jaguar. So then I wake up in the morning and I have a dream, I've got a chapter to write today, or I've got 2 pages of a chapter to write today. My dream then is to specifically go into that. It's all governed by the overriding dream, that this is where I'm going with this. But each day I have a specific dream. So I think we can have a big overriding dream. But let's use a different example. Let's say a yoga teacher who wants to use yoga to help people understand the need to move into a life economy. And that's the overriding dream. But each time she teaches yoga, she brings us in some way, like, yeah, yoga is all about repetition. Yoga is about change. Yoga is about taking care of ourselves. Yoga is about taking care of the planet. And so we can have, I love this question, Francesca, because the dream can be very, very big and quite broad in general, but then it can be broken down into a lot of sub-dreams. Each day you can have a different sub-dream, and that's one of the reasons I ask you to take this daily practice, where you really look at the dream, you look at the barriers, and that can change. So you touch one Jaguar, and you go out and you create actions that change that Jaguar, but then another one may show up. So in my case, for example, touch the Jaguar, well, I'm going to write. So then I start writing, and then another Jaguar comes along and says, well, wait a minute. What I wrote yesterday is no good. I don't think it's going to work. And so there's a Jaguar that says, well, maybe I'm not a good writer. Maybe I should stop. But no, instead I say, hey, that was good practice. I learned some more skills about writing. Again, it's like the pianist or the tennis player that has a bad day practicing doesn't mean they give up. It means you get back out there and do it again. So we can have a series of go along, and big ones and more specific ones each day. Even throughout the day, that could change. Thank you for asking that.
Great. The next question is, what is the role of money in the life economy?
Well, the role of money in the life economy it takes a much lesser form than it does in the current economy, and we really don't know where all of this is going to go as we move into the life economy. Things have to evolve, but what becomes much more important is what's important to us from a spiritual standpoint, what's important to us from a standpoint of cleaning up. I think at the beginning, we would find that money might play a fairly important role. So people are going to, by the nature of the way that we currently live, people are going to want to be paid to clean up. Let's say we hire someone in the city where we live we hire a group of people to go out and pick up the garbage around, the plastic people throw, whatever they find on the side of the road or wherever. And maybe some of them expect to be paid for that. And maybe that would be a good thing as our economy recovers, that we start paying people more so then they can inject money back into the economy. But as we move on, I think we find less and less the need for money and more the need for just living well. And if we look at indigenous cultures, traditionally, and the ones we came from, some form of barter is always important. You've always got to have that. And I think we'll always have one form of money or another. It may be a blockchain type of money, like the infamous Bitcoin, and that will probably evolve into new types of currency. We'll need currencies of some form, but I do think much more emphasis will be on how we live. And we're seeing that with the new generation. I talk to college students, seeing more and more how they will trade having free time with making more money. They'll often choose the having more time and less money. We're seeing a transformation take place here. It's going to be very interesting to see what this coronavirus does for that, because we've all in a way learned new lifestyles. I've always liked to go out to restaurants and meet with friends a few times a week. I haven't been doing that. And I'm beginning to really, really much more appreciate the cooking my partner, my girlfriend and I have here at home. We're having a great time cooking up meals and doing things like that. I think that'll change the way we live. And I think we're all, to a certain degree, realizing that we can live simpler lives. We don't have to travel as much to have meetings. We can do this, without flying around the country to go and speak at events. So things are going to change for sure.
All right. Our next question is there a way to keep getting clearer on what your dream is?
Yeah, I would like to answer that by saying, I think that you can be clear on your dream right now. And that could be, I don't quite understand my dream, so my dream is to understand my dream. And you could go into that and make that a daily practice of how do I get deeper into my dream. But that in itself is a clear dream. My dream is that I want to understand more of what I want for the rest of my life. And I'm going to spend some time every day doing that. I'm going to take the actions that are necessary. What are those actions? And maybe for me, it's like I love to jog in the forest near my home for a mile. And then I usually meditate for a while, and I can go into these kinds of things. And then I jog a little bit more. Some people it's yoga, some people it's just meditation. Some people might be falling asleep and dreaming about it, or writing it down, or playing it on a flute or the piano. But to really, if you're not clear on your dream, then the dream is to get clear on your dream. And then as you do that, you move into getting more and more into the specifics. So it's very definitely an evolving process. And that's what makes it a lot of fun. That's what really makes it tremendous fun. And I find that, in writing, I start with this, well, let's see, I want to write a book about this statement that the shaman made back in 1969 about touching the Jaguar. Okay. So, but what does that mean? How do I start this book? And then I get a dream of how I might start the book, and I start the book. And then as I get into that, I get another dream what the next chapter should be, and so on and so forth. Other writers will outline the whole thing to begin with, and that's a very specific dream for the whole thing. For me, it's like I kind of dream each part of the book as I go along. It almost as though the book creates itself. So there's many ways of doing this, but I think it is definitely an evolving process and empowering. And it's like anything else in life, the more we do it, the better we get at it and the more we enjoy it. So I really encourage you to just get started, and don't be concerned if it doesn't seem to be quite working the way you thought it was going to work. Know that it really is working. It just may not be quite the way you thought it was going to work, but keep going, moving into it deeper and deeper.
Thanks, John. Next question is, what daily rituals did you create to let go of fear and disappointment to continue out for the Jaguar after being rejected by 39 publishers?
Rituals?
Yeah, like what did you do personally? What kind of rituals or practices did you do to let go of the fear and the rejection that you experienced?
Well, again, that kind of changed over time. At the beginning, it was the toughest. I think about 7 or 8 of these rejections. I wasn't it really got tough, And some of these were some of the big publishing houses. And I'd already published 5 books on shamanism with one publisher who, that's his niche publishing area. And when I writing Confessions of Economic Hitman, is obvious to both of us, that the publisher and me, that they weren't the right ones to do it. So after I got, half a dozen to a dozen rejections, it was tough. But I journeyed back. I did a shamanic journey, but I like to do that, like what we did, back into, I saw that college professor that I had, and I saw how wrong he'd been. Because at this point I had proven that I could publish books. I'd published 5 books on shamanism. And so he was totally wrong. And I'd been told by the guy who published the books on shamanism, I was a really good writer. I was a good storyteller. So I'd go deep into that. And then I would imagine what that publisher, I did this with each one of those early ones, what were they thinking? And I would come up with a story. And it probably wasn't the correct story. Who knows what the story was? But I'd come up with a story. Well, yeah, this guy had a fight with his wife at breakfast. You kind of see this, this woman had food poisoning when she came to work. Whatever it was, this guy doesn't like my politics. He thinks I'm a radical. And this guy is afraid, or this woman in the publishing industry has a lot of women. This woman, she's afraid that if she publishes this, she'll get into a lot of trouble. She may get sued by the National Security Agency or Bechtel Corporation or somebody. So I would create these stories in my own mind that was touching that Jaguar, and those stories would say, okay, yeah, I don't know whether that's really what happened or not, but something like that happened, and it's not about the book. It's not about the writing. And as time went on, I had to create, I would get more and more accustomed to this, so it would come pretty quickly. It just became almost a habit. Oh, here's another rejection letter. Let's send the book out to somebody. Let's see here, let's go down the list here. And I had an agent working with me too, which very much helped. And we would talk about this, and he'd have a list, and he'd say, well, let's try these people next. So, but you can do it without an agent also. Thank you.
Great. We're going to continue with the questions, but in the honoring of time for anybody that needs to hop off, I want to let everybody know that we'll be sending out the recording of this chat within the next 48 hours, but probably on the sooner side. And in that email, you'll also get the PDF that John was referring to, the workbook that outlines all of these questions. So you will all receive that. Thank you so much for being here, and we will continue for at least another 10 minutes with the questions. All right.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think 10 minutes is good. And I think let's do a little closing by just.
Yes.
Can you turn on everybody's microphone, Jessica?
Yep. Yeah.
Everybody could say a word.
John. Love you so much, John. Hugs to Kate.
Really appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Jungle.
Thank you. Your book.
Hi, friends. So I see a bunch of people are hopping off, and if you need to, that's totally cool. But I want to let you know that if you do want to stick around for more Q&A, we'll be doing that for another 10 minutes. Thumbs up. Okay. Great.
I'm here.
All right. Awesome. All right. Next question for you, John. Some work is dangerous. The guys running the world kill presidents, journalists disappear. Your work with Confessions of an Economic Hitman was dangerous. How did you deal with family/life-threatening work?
Yeah. In fact, yeah, my life was threatened. My young daughter's life was threatened at one point. And I backed off for a while when that happened. I write about that in the book. But I think today and after that, I mean, I was very concerned, especially when my infant daughter's life was threatened. But what I've come to realize later is that the most dangerous thing for me to do is to stay quiet. and not do what my heart calls me to do, what my passion is. That for me personally, the risk out there of being, I don't know, assassinated or character assassination happens a lot. That's a lot less of a risk than being quiet and having to live with myself and knowing that I know things, I believe things at least, that need to be shared. And that's my passion. And so I need to follow my passion. If I don't follow my passion, then I'm not really alive anyway. So it's important to follow that passion. And I think it's also, I mean, it's fair to say that I don't feel threatened very much anymore. That happened shortly after Confessions came, well, not just shortly after Confessions came out, it happened. And then it happened for a while after that there were some threats. I was even, as I talk about this in Touching the Jaguar, I was poisoned at one point. I spent a couple of weeks in a hospital in New York City. I'd gone to New York to give a speech to the United Nations. And at a lunch, somebody poisoned me, and the whole details are in the book. And I had 70% of my large intestine removed as a result. Those times were scary, but that's all kind of gone away now. I don't feel that anymore, perhaps because my writing has changed, perhaps because things have changed, perhaps because it's become more acceptable. I've always felt that in a way, my writing is my best defense policy, because any pros, let's say anybody that worked for a government organization in any country, whether it's Russia or the United States or China, whatever, that might want to, doesn't like what I have to say, knows that doing something to me, if I die of a strange death, that's going to sell a lot of books. I become a martyr, and it gets the word out there. So I've always felt that publishing, getting the word out, is my best defense. And on that subject, I would say the worst thing you can do if you're considering being a whistleblower or putting something controversial out is to get the message out that you're going to do that. That's what I did at the beginning, and I got threats. That's when I got threats, when I began to write what became Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and I tried to contact other former economic hitmen and the jackals I describe in the book. And after I contacted them, I get these phone calls threatening my life and my daughter's. And so I laid off for quite a long time. And by the time I finally came around to writing it again, I decided I would do it totally in secret. I wouldn't tell anybody that I was writing the book. Instead of an expose that included other stories, it would be a personal confession. I didn't need to contact anyone. It was just my own confession, from my own perspective. And I'd write the whole book and then get it in the hands of these publishers. And even though they didn't publish it, it was out there. And if somebody, if it killed me, probably all those publishers would have jumped to buy it and got it out there big time. So I felt that it was my best insurance policy. So if you're a whistleblower, if you're thinking about doing something that you think might be controversial, don't threaten to do it. Just do it. Get it out there, get it all together, and get it out there. But you know, what's the risk in life? And part of the risk is not following our bliss. That's the greatest risk of all.
All right, I think we'll have time for one or two more questions. Our next question is, how does one extract from death economy investments that are the only source of financial security?
Well, that's a very good question too. Increasingly, we've got things that we can invest in and companies that are doing better. I just talked to my financial advisor yesterday about this very thing, and nobody's perfect. There's no companies out there that are perfect at creating a life economy, but there are a lot that are working toward that. And so it's important to support them. There's nothing perfect in life, you know? So, you know, just keep looking and support the ones that are really, really making an attempt to do that. The B corporations, the benefit corporations, the local co-ops, and so on and so forth. And, you know, it's interesting that BlackRock, you know, the biggest investment firm in the world, I believe it is, recently committed not to investing anymore in fossil fuels and to pushing all of its companies to be better, to be greener. And in last August, the business board, which includes about 192 of the world's the CEOs of some of the world's largest, most powerful, most profitable corporations, came out with a statement that it's no longer sufficient for our system to focus on making profits. We need to focus on paying our employees a decent salary and giving them health care and taking care of the communities where we work, the very things that go into a life economy. So if you're invested in one of those companies, and you can look them up, send them letters. Keep putting the pressure on. Say, hey, you made this commitment. Are you following through? And don't just send the letters yourself. Send out to all your networking circles. I had a CEO not long ago tell me that he really wanted to do the right thing. He wanted his company to be greener, but he was afraid that if he implemented some of these policies, he would lose 0.5% of market share, or the stock price would go down and he'd be fired by his primary investors. His CEO, no, he was the CEO, but by his primary investors, they'd get rid of him and replace him by someone who only cared about market share or stock prices. So he said, I have to be careful, but I encourage you, please tell everybody out there to send me letters saying, hey, I love your products, but I'm not going to buy them anymore until you pay your workers in Indonesia a fair salary or whatever. Send that out to all your social networking circles. Ask them to send it out to all of theirs. And we keep pushing. So we keep pushing these companies. So look at the best companies that are doing the best things in their field, and invest in them, and push them to do better and better. Thank them for what they've done. Push them to do better and better. Don't make them bad. Push them to do better and better and better. Hey, Nike, I'm really glad that you converted from oil-based glues to water-based glues, but I'd like to see you pay your workers in Indonesia a higher salary. And before we get to the next question, I just want to point out that you can see over here the mass. So these are these coronaviruses masks. I'm just kidding.
John.
The grocery store after this wearing this mask right here. And yesterday I wore this one here. All right, one more question.
That connects to our final question. I think it's fitting, which is, John, how did you tell people in your life that you moved from a societally acceptable, prestigious job as an economist to following your pull towards the woo-woo ancient shamanistic practices? One of my fears is not being accepted or being made fun of as my life shifts towards deeper esoteric practices. Thank you so very much for your light and compassion.
Somebody else is just holding up a cool mask. So I'll tell you, it was particularly tough, not with my family so much as with my employees. I had about, I think, 40 employees at the time, and the company had 2,000, but in my department I had, I think, 40, and very good friends, all fairly young people, and they had to be convinced that if I left this prestigious job as their boss, I must be crazy. And they try to tell me that, because if I wasn't crazy and they stayed, then they must be crazy. So it was very tough. And plus the hierarchy of the company, they did everything they could to keep me there. And they did hire me back as a consultant a few times when I got a little scared about not having enough money. I went back and did some advising to them. In the long run, we have to make these decisions that support our hearts, our passion. And there may be a bit of a rocky road in there for a while. And I don't know how long the while is. That depends on your specific circumstances. But it's worth that rocky road to follow your heart, to truly follow your heart. And in the long run, you'll be happier. And people around you will know that. And if they truly care about you and they truly love you, they'll see that you did the right thing, and they'll support you. And eventually, they may not at the beginning from various reasons. Like my friends who worked for me couldn't see their way to support me in leaving, because not only did they know who was going to take the place, but that if I left under the circumstances, then it made them look pretty bad. So there's many reasons why people may resist you, but in the end, if they truly care about you and they're true friends, they'll come around. Follow your heart. Just follow your heart and use your passion. Follow your passions and use your skills to do what you most want to do in life. Ultimately, that's all you've got.
Thanks, John. And thank you, everybody, so much. This was wonderful and beautiful to connect in the comment section and on camera here. As I mentioned before, we'll be sending out the recording, we'll be sending out the workbook, and a few people asked if there will be more shamanic journeys, more workshops, etc. We'll see, but for sure we have planned is 2 mini workshop conversations during May, during June, and during July that will happen inside the Facebook group, and we'll email you with all of those details next week. So we will continue staying connected, and this is just the beginning.
I'd like to just add, Jessica, that we're going to bring some great guests on this, including a Mayan shaman who's agreed to come, and some other amazing people that will be joining us for the session.
Yes. Yes. And I also did get a question from somebody saying, can we share this workshop recording? What you can do is encourage your friends to pre-order John's book, pre-order Touching the Jaguar. And now that the recording will be live, as soon as people pre-order and fill out the form like you did, they'll get immediate access to this workshop. So this will be available for all those that continue to pre-order Touching the Jaguar.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.